All right. Hello, everyone who's here. Hopefully, you can hear me. This is my first time trying this. Um, Wait another minute or two for people to show up. All right, I guess I will get started. My name's Tom Allison. I'm a director of engineering at Facebook. I've been at the company for around 6 years now. I've done a variety of different roles, managing teams of, you know, 5 to 10 people, and now upwards of a few hundred. So right now I manage the newsfeed engineering team, as well as another engineering group called Interfaces that works on our main app products, both building mobile infrastructure and the experiences. And before Facebook, I co-founded a startup called Zenby. I was actually acqui-hired by Facebook in 2010. And before that, I worked in finance at a hedge fund called Two Sigma, and then at a retail company called Daytech Online. So I will go ahead and answer some of the questions that Evan sent me, and then some of them that are popping up here in the Q&A. First question here is, what is one thing you wish you knew about your career when you were about to graduate as a college student? And I think for that one, it would actually be to be less fearful of failure. I think certainly when I was in school and, in my early jobs, I was like a classic type A overachiever, like perfectionist. Everything had to work, everything had to be right. And so a lot of projects always felt really high stakes. And it wasn't until, I had a bunch of experience when I realized that, look, not everything's going to work out. You know, some stuff with my startup didn't work out. And actually at Facebook, one of the kind of signs on the wall that is always memorable to me was this slogan called "Fail Harder." So, it's actually kind of culturally okay for projects to fail, for things to fail, as long as you're learning why and you're not repeating the same mistakes. And I found actually once I kind of accepted that, it was a lot easier to kind of experiment, to, get involved in new projects, to try things without being completely stressed out about them all the time. So that's kind of a hard thing. It was a hard thing for me to learn, but certainly I wish I had kind of known that earlier in my career. I would have saved myself a lot of stress. There's another question: how much does brand name in college matter? If you attended a school with a lesser known name, does it make sense to try to go to a graduate program that is top tier? I think that it matters. I do think that certainly, at Facebook, the recruiters pay a lot of attention to top tier schools, but I don't think it's the only thing that matters. I look at tons of resumes from people that are not at a brand name school. Certainly when we're hiring, mobile engineers or certain engineers, like where you work is important. Internships matter. Lots of different factors matter. How you do in our interview process matters a lot. So, I don't think that I would necessarily recommend like, oh, you have to go to a top tier graduate program to get a position. But, you do have to figure out, the right place to get work experience, the right place where you're going to learn. And certainly for some specialization. So for example, if you want to do something with, advanced machine learning or computer vision or something that is very specialized, I do think some of the postgraduate programs differ, and some of them matter. So I do think when you're talking about recruiting or looking for somebody with a very specialized skill set, it potentially starts to get more important there. All right. How did you figure out what to prioritize and focus on during the early days of your startup, Zenby? So I did a startup called Zenby with a few co-founders. The thing that we were trying to do at the time was try to make email a little bit more social and collaborative. This was in the year 2006. Facebook was becoming more popular, LinkedIn, Twitter. We didn't feel like email had been innovated as a communication channel in a while, and we felt like actually a lot of communication was happening on social networks. So we essentially just prototyped a bunch of ideas that we thought would be valuable, and got an MVP of the product out, in less than a year. And then at that point, it was really figuring out how do we respond to the feedback, how do we build more features. Once you actually get a product out into the market, it's a lot easier to actually figure out what to do and what to work on next, and the prioritization problem becomes a lot simpler. All right, let's see. What would you consider to be your favorite feature on Facebook that you've deployed? What about the most difficult? So my favorite Facebook feature that we've deployed is something called reactions that if you use Facebook, you've probably seen. So about a little over a year ago, we started brainstorming alternatives to the like button. And how could you allow people to express feedback on posts that kind of matched some of the core things that people wanted to express. So it was a really fun project because we did a lot of work with the user research team, with the analytics team to understand the types of things people wanted to, the types of emotions people wanted to convey. And it was a really fun design process. We tested it internationally. And it ended up being a feature that people really enjoy and use a lot. So I just feel like kind of end to end, it was a super fun project. And it's always really like gratifying when you build something that people end up using a lot, which has been the case with reactions. I think one of the most difficult projects I worked on was a little earlier in my career at Facebook, a project called Facebook Home. It was essentially kind of a deeply integrated Android experience on Facebook. So we had a lock screen and a launcher. And we also had it pre-installed on some HTC phones and a relationship with AT&T. And so actually the process of building out mobile phone software that has to go through carrier certification and has to be burned in on a device is incredibly challenging. There's a lot of logistics that you need to do. There's a lot of different testing that you need to do. And so that was definitely the most difficult project from a technical perspective, and also just it was a different way of developing software in terms of working with third parties and going through their testing processes. So that definitely takes the cake for the most difficult, although it was a lot of fun and I learned a lot during that time. All right, let's see. Which people have helped you the most in your transition from engineer to director of engineering? So yeah, I started at Facebook as an engineer. I really enjoyed engineering. Most managers at Facebook were formerly engineers. And the cool thing is that Facebook has a pretty good process for allowing people to try out management. So my manager at the time said, hey, do you think you'd be interested in managing? We didn't make the transition right away. I started out by organizing some of the team meetings, having one-on-ones with people. I got a lot of feedback from my manager at the time. And then certainly when I felt ready and when the team had built kind of a relationship with me, we kind of made it official that I was a manager. Managing at Facebook is not a promotion. We have like equivalent kind of levels to engineering. So it was more of just shifting a lot of what I do from kind of coding to more coaching and guiding people and guiding projects. And then as I kind of progressed in my career at Facebook, over time, I was just given kind of worked on more complicated projects that required more scope, that required more people and more coordination. But all along the way, I had several mentors. I had several people coaching me. There's a very strong community of senior managers at Facebook that kind of build the culture, that work with kind of new managers to kind of set expectations and to help them succeed. And so, there's definitely, I could certainly name specific people, but it was just a lot of people in the Facebook community that helped out with transitioning into management. And then as I kind of grew out the scope, who kind of guided me along the way. All right, this is a cool question. This is something I get asked a lot. What are the key differences that you found in your experience of working on a startup versus working for a big established company? More specifically, what are the main points to keep in mind when choosing between the two? So there's a couple of differences. I think the first is like when you are working at a startup, just you're working with less people, especially if you're working at an early stage startup. So it's really important that you are able to get along, certainly with your co-founders or the early employees there, because that you're going to be working really intensely with those people, trying to get out a product, going through a lot of difficult decisions as you try to get have your startup have traction. And so you really have to be committed. You have to be, kind of committed to the people or to the vision or, something that's going to sustain you, because that's what you're going to be focused on. At a larger company, certainly at Facebook, you have more options. If you start working on a project and that's not a good fit for you, there's a lot of things in place to help you find a project that might be a better fit. There's a lot more support in terms of kind of day-to-day career development, in terms of having a manager that can coach you and guide you in your career. And a little bit more kind of infrastructure for you to kind of work with in terms of figuring out what to do, mentorship, things of that nature. The difference is, mainly, particularly if you came from a founder experience, you may be working on somebody else's idea in a larger company. But that said, I actually feel like at Facebook there's a fairly entrepreneurial culture. It's one of the reasons I stayed for a while. So you can find this in larger companies where people are spinning up new projects. Lots of the teams have kind of a startup-like entrepreneurial feel. So I've actually found, at least for me, working in a larger company satisfying, like Facebook, because I've had the option to rotate on projects pretty regularly, so it didn't get stale. But that said, the people that I worked with at my startup, I still stay in touch with. It was like really a kind of a one-of-a-kind experience. It was intense, but very, very cool. So you do make kind of a pretty deep personal connection when you're kind of working on a startup with people trying to get an idea off the ground for a long time. All right. Did you ever find the need of an MBA to be better at your job as director, or just to learn more in the field of leadership? I'm kind of a big fan of learning on the job and working in companies with people that support that. I always thought about going back for an MBA or a master's degree. There was a period of time when I went back to school for a master's degree in computer science, but then I kind of dropped out again to just go work at a startup. So I've never been able to make this kind of postgraduate school thing stick because I've always found companies where I was learning a lot and growing. And so I don't think that you necessarily need an MBA. I do think that it can help. I work with a lot of people that have MBAs kind of in the business side of things. But for me as a director of engineering, the most important thing was to get a lot of experience building full stack products, to get a better understanding of what things go wrong, to get a better understanding of what product ideas work, of what technologies work, of how to iterate and how to move fast. And those are all things that you tend to learn on the job with experience. And so I generally recommend that, particularly if you're interested in a job where you're building products, to try to get some real world work experience and kind of learn what it takes to actually ship things. That's probably the most valuable experience that you'll get. All right. There was another question. Let's see. What job experience in your early career was the most beneficial for you in the long run? So one of my early jobs out of school was at this company called Daytech Online. They were an online trading company for like retail traders, so anybody could kind of open an account and trade stocks. And um, the person that ran engineering there, his name was Peter, ended up becoming one of my kind of mentors. He was just somebody that not only knew kind of the full technical stack, but he also had a really good product sense, and he really cared about all of it. So when you had a discussion with him, he could talk to you about user design, he could talk to you about JavaScript, he could talk to you about backend systems. He could really think through the whole stack, and I actually found that to be like a really cool skill that I aspired to have. And so it was probably one of the most influential people in my career, because I said, well, I want to be like him. I want to know the full stack. So I started out as a front-end engineer. I started out building HTML and JavaScript. But then I said, you know what, if I'm really going to want to kind of be like this guy and be like a CTO or, run an engineering team or build products, I really need to kind of learn the whole stack. And so a lot of my career from that point forward became, okay, let me work on a backend system. Let me work on the networking stack. And I worked on different systems at that company. I worked on different systems at the hedge fund. And then actually he was one of the people that asked me to do a startup with him, where we really worked on building a product from scratch. And so, that early career experience of having kind of a role model or a mentor was valuable to me. And so that's, I think if you're looking for something out of school or you're looking for a job, if you find somebody there that is kind of inspiring, that you kind of look up to, that you can watch and learn from, that tends to be a really amazing experience that could help you figure out what you want to do with your career. All right. Question is, what do you see as Facebook's role in the open source community? Facebook has actually been committed to the open source community for a while. When I joined the company several years ago, one of the things that people told me was that, Mark essentially started building Facebook, in his dorm room on a lamp stack, right? So he leveraged open source software to create Facebook. And so he was very receptive to kind of supporting open source software, since Facebook certainly and many companies benefited from it. So Facebook is solving a bunch of things at scale that problems that are certainly pretty novel to the size of our operations. So our ability to actually share what we're learning and creating back out into the world so that it's easier for other people to solve similar problems is really important to us. And so we have a pretty enthusiastic group of people internally in the company that work on our open source programs. They're really, really talented people that make sure that our projects are, high quality and well curated. And generally, when we see something that we think could be useful in the community, we go ahead and try to open source it, whether it's on kind of mobile or some of our backend systems. There's a lot of examples of this. So I'm actually really proud of it. It's something that generates kind of a lot of excitement within Facebook, and certainly something that we benefit from as well when people kind of contribute back to our projects or find interesting ways to enhance them. All right, this question is from Victoria. How do you stay confident in your ability to deliver results in the face of uncertainty and pressure? Let's see. Okay, there was a problem with the stream. It looks like it's back. Okay, so how do you stay confident in your ability to deliver results in the face of uncertainty and pressure? How do you keep yourself from being intimidated when you're surrounded by the best and brightest? This is actually a really common issue in kind of high-tech companies and certainly high-achieving companies, and there's actually a name for it. They call it imposter syndrome, and it's surprisingly common. It turns out that a lot of the people that are around you that you think are the best and brightest and you're intimidated by are actually having the same thoughts about you and their peers. So a lot of people internally at Facebook kind of have opened up and talked about this idea of imposter syndrome and the fact that they don't feel like they're good enough, but they've kind of generally overcome it. I think the first kind of way to stay confident is to realize that there's a lot of other people that are kind of experiencing the same thing. I think one of the things I initially thought was that, oh man, these people, especially like the people that were kind of more senior than me, have it all together, they have it all figured out. But then as I've progressed in my career, I realized that a lot of us are kind of figuring some of this stuff out as we go. Nobody has all of their stuff together. Everybody has kind of moments of indecision or a crisis of confidence, or feels really stressed out. And I think once you kind of realize that this is a fairly common thing, it becomes much easier to talk about it. It becomes much easier to ask people for help. That's something that I think took me a while, takes a lot of people, is being able to go to, whether it's your manager or whether it's a peer, and say, hey, I'm like really struggling with this right now. I need some help. Or, hey, I'm just like really worried about this. What do you think? So again, like, you know, the ability to deliver results, or certainly the ability to kind of keep up with the pressure, can be a function of how strong your support network is. So do you have, you know, mentors that you can go talk to, or do you have a good relationship with your manager, or, you know, do you have somebody that you can go to just to kind of vent if you need to, so that you're not kind of just constantly in your head thinking about this stuff. And so that's kind of what I've learned. I really love being around the best and the brightest people, but at the same time, I recognize that all of them, at some point or another, face these moments of uncertainty. So the more you can kind of just be honest about that, I think the easier it is. And you should definitely try to work in an environment where people are collaborative and helpful. I think if you end up in a toxic work environment where, you know, people don't acknowledge that that burnout is real and pressure is real, then that can be just like the wrong situation. So you got to find a place where, you know, people are motivated, people work hard, but they also know when to kind of take the foot off the gas and not burn out. Cool. All right. What is the most important lesson you've learned from working in various fields? Probably the lesson that I've learned the most from is actually developing a strong sense of empathy with other people. I don't know, I see this time and time again where people don't sometimes stop to consider somebody else's viewpoint, or try to kind of look at things from their perspective, and then there's just conflict. And so for me, a lot of kind of success in terms of, you know, collaboration and getting projects done has been kind of learning to really try to stop, understand somebody else's viewpoint, accept the fact that like I may or may not be incorrect. And you know, at Facebook we talk a lot about kind of diversity and the importance of diverse opinions, diverse backgrounds, recognizing that it is these other viewpoints that help kind of get us to a better place. So that's just something that I think has been one of the consistent things in a lot of my different roles that have helped me figure this out. And I think it's really important as a manager too, because if you can't stop and think about what, you know, somebody on your team is going through, or think through what are the challenges that they're facing from their position, then you're not going to be in a great position to kind of guide them forward. All right. How useful was your bachelor's degree in philosophy when you were transitioning into engineering? Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't have a undergraduate computer science degree. I've since taken several courses. I know a lot I've done coursework before, but I did graduate from college with a degree in philosophy. I think the one thing that it's probably helped with is certainly just like kind of logical, well-constructed thinking. Like one of my favorite philosophy courses were the logic courses, right? And those are very much kind of in the spirit of computer science and programming. And I think philosophy kind of teaches you a bit about how to structure an argument, how to look at both sides of an issue, how to think through a problem, how to think abstractly. And those are all things that actually map well to computer science. There's some kind of courses around philosophy of the mind and things of that kind of start getting into like, can you recreate consciousness in a machine, that touch upon computer science. So there's a bunch of interesting work there. But I mostly, took philosophy because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in college. Not because I thought it would, help me as a software developer. This is a similar question. What brought you towards technology coming from a non-engineering major? There would have been so many other areas you could have contributed to in your startup. What attracted you to technology and the CTO role? So the thing with me is that I always really loved programming and technology. So I taught myself how to program basically web pages in like 1994, I guess, 1993, back when I was still in high school. I always loved computers. I love computer games. It was really fascinating when kind of the web started to come up, and I love the idea that you could kind of make a web page. And I love JavaScript as a programming language. I learned a lot about that. And even when I was in college, I had a job part-time, basically making websites for a design company. And I just always really enjoyed kind of being a developer. And so for me, I just naturally gravitated towards jobs that I could do programming in. It's funny because I definitely took courses in college, but for me, actually like practicing kind of doing software development and software engineering was so much more interesting than kind of learning about it in the classroom. So when I graduated school, I already had a job as kind of a web developer. I got another job as a web developer, and then on the job, I kind of learned back-end systems and just had a ton of on-the-job learning experiences. It's funny, when I worked at this hedge fund called 2 Sigma, they had a program where you could go, they would do some level of tuition reimbursement. So I went back to get a master's degree in computer science. And a lot of the people were like, well, what are you doing? You already have enough experience to clearly succeed in the job. Why don't you go get a degree in economics or something like that? But I don't know. My learning style has always just been very much learning on the job, trying out new roles. And I think the cool thing when I did the startup in terms of doing the CTO roles, I really, again, I mentioned this before, I really love being able to think about a whole product and a whole system end to end. And it's not to say that I didn't like learning other aspects of the startup. So, when you work at a startup, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything. So I learned about server administration. I learned about spam administration. I learned some of the basics of setting up a marketing campaign and using Google Analytics. I learned how to kind of set up a blog and do some basic social media stuff. So I think you just kind of have to Again, if you can get into an environment that allows you to try a bunch of different things, that's really the best place. At least it was for me to learn, and I've met a lot of other people like that. I do think, though, if I had wanted to go and work on compilers, or if I had wanted to go build, file systems, or low-level distributed systems, or work in computer vision, or I think that I would have definitely gone back, and I would have gotten an engineering major for that. I think a lot of the folks that are doing kind of some of the specialized work do benefit tremendously from going to a good graduate school program, going to a good PhD program. So it really depends on what you want to do. I always love building products. So for me, doing a lot of the learn on the job stuff was super beneficial for me. But again, if you want to go and build, the next kind of great computer vision algorithm, going down a more traditional kind of engineering curriculum is probably going to be the right thing for you. All right, there's a question. If you could change Facebook in any way with no questions asked, what would you change? Well, like, one of the things that I think Facebook has the potential to do is help you discover even more content than we're able to show you right now in newsfeed. So one of the things that I talk about when I'm trying to recruit people that are interested in this problem is I say, Facebook right now, especially when you get content in newsfeed, all of it really comes from your social graph, right? So the people that you've friended, or the pages that you've liked, the groups that you're a part of, the content comes from your kind of explicit social graph. But if you think about all of the content that's being shared on Facebook in a given day, billions of pieces of content, it's easy to imagine that there is some content out there that if you saw that would be the most important thing that you had read the entire day, or would have been the most interesting thing, or the most influential. So what I kind of want to do is make, I would love for Facebook to be a place that could also surface, more interesting content that I'm interested in. And so, we're certainly working on things of that nature, and we have a couple of products that kind of do this, but I think that there's so much more potential there. So for example, if you're an avid runner, maybe your friends don't run, or maybe you don't have a lot of running content in Facebook because you're not connected to it, but like the best running article could be out there, or the best running tip. And I think that we could find that for you and surface it to you in a way that made a lot of sense. So that's kind of the thing that I would love to see us do. And we're certainly looking at a lot of that work, and that's one of the most exciting areas for me. All right, how do you motivate your team to produce high quality work while also creating a very enthusiastic and energetic environment? So part of the way that you do this is that you have to give people some degree of autonomy, the ability to choose the work that they are most passionate about. So for those of you that are not familiar with how Facebook works, when you join as an engineer, you start in a program called Boot Camp. You don't join a team necessarily directly when you get a job at Facebook. We don't necessarily give you a job and say, hey, you're going to go join the database team, or you're going to go join, the newsfeed team. We say, you're going to come join Facebook, and you're going to go through boot camp where you're going to learn about all of the different teams at Facebook and all of the different areas of the business, and you're going to be able to get hands-on instruction in our technologies and the way that we code and things of that nature. And then you're going to get to choose your own team at the end of that. And we're going to tell you which teams are most in need of people and which are going to be the highest impact teams. But at the end of the day, you're going to choose. And that's kind of an important part of the culture of kind of creating an environment where people can go to the area where they think they're going to have the most impact. And so I think that's something that allows people to do their best work and also stay really enthusiastic and motivated, because you're kind of choosing the thing that you think is going to allow you to deliver the most impact. The other thing is, when I started at Facebook, the thing that they really emphasize and still do is kind of like understanding what your strengths are. So what are the things that you're good at? Like, find an area that's going to cater to them. You know, a lot of people focus on trying to improve their weaknesses, but people aren't necessarily think that that's very fun. So we just try to make sure that we're helping you find work that you're strong at, that you enjoy. And, you know, I think that that general company culture is what allows the quality of work to happen, while also having people be really happy and motivated. And so I think Facebook does that well. I think there's a few companies that also do that well, but that's that key ingredient of giving people a fair amount of autonomy to find the thing that they're most passionate about and that they're the best at. Okay, so this question is, who were your advisors when you were building a startup, and how did they help you? So when I built my startup, I had few co-founders, and two in particular. And the cool thing is that they had prior experience starting companies, and they were very successful entrepreneurs. So one of my co-founders had, I believe, 2 successful exits, and another one started a company that sold for like over $1 billion. So these were pretty successful entrepreneurs who wanted to do it again. So certainly if you are in a position where you can join a startup with somebody who has a track record, you're going to learn a lot. But in addition to obviously their experience, you know, we had angel investors that gave us a lot of advice at first, that we shared a lot of feedback with. And also, that was probably the main things, is that, you know, experienced co-founders and their network of people were the things that, you know, advised us the most. I think if you don't have that situation, for example, if you're starting a company with a friend from college, or if you're kind of new to this and you just have a great idea, then the really important thing to do is try to set up some sort of an advisory board or advisors. Get involved with a venture capital company that can connect you with the right people and advise you. You're going to need some people that can introduce you to people, that can introduce you to companies, that can introduce you to engineers. And that typically comes from, you know, the venture community is known for setting people up, some of the incubator programs, but certainly you could ask for somebody to be on an advisor to your company to help you there. All right, I'm just picking the next question. This question is, how can one make an impact while working within big companies? So there's a couple of ways related to what I said before. The first thing is to put yourself in a position where you choose work that you are passionate about. If you're not excited about your project, or you don't feel like it's the best use of your skills, then that's the conversation to have with your manager to figure out if there's something better that you could be doing. The way things work at Facebook is, in terms of making impact, we actually have these 6-month kind of performance cycles. We actually just went through one recently. And so every 6 months, we have the performance cycle, and we essentially have a process where we collect feedback about all of our employees, And you get to ask people for peer feedback. So these are your coworkers, other people on your team, people that you worked with. You say, hey, could you provide feedback for me during this performance review? And then you also get to write your own review. And then I, as a manager, read all of this and essentially work with other managers to figure out kind of a rating. And we have a scale, meets all, exceeds expectations, greatly exceeds. And we have a way of kind of rewarding impact in terms of, we look at, how did this contribute to the business? How did this contribute to getting a product out the door? How did this improve the lives of Facebook users? How did this potentially allow us to make our servers more efficient or our code? There's like lots of ways to make impact in terms of how we goal that I think are pretty well communicated. And then in terms of how we evaluate that, we have a culture where we give people feedback, right? So again, every 6 months we do performance reviews, which is a chance to kind of, for me as a manager, to walk through, like, here's what you did well, here's why this was impactful, here are the things that you should do more of, here's where you maybe struggled a little bit, here are the things that you need to develop. So I think you need to make sure that if you're working at a large company, you're working at one that really values impact and can articulate what impact really means in terms of, the mission that it has and how it's, improving people's lives or building great products or, building great services. And then hopefully you have a way that you're getting feedback on a regular basis so that if it turns out that you're not working on something impactful, if it turns out that, you're not doing as good as you could be because of maybe some connection that you're missing or, skill that you need to acquire, that you can get that feedback early so that you can improve. And so that's, something that we value a lot at Facebook. That's something that I've had at other companies where, you have to have kind of a culture of feedback so that, you kind of learn how to make impact. And as you become more senior, when you first start at Facebook and you kind of come in, especially if you're out of school, there's a lot of guidance. As a manager, I'll say, hey, you should go work on this project. Here's the tasks that you need to complete. Here's how you can go about doing it. And it's very kind of guided and explicit. But as you kind of become more senior, you become kind of expected to learn how to identify impact, how to identify new projects, how to lead projects, how to lead projects that span multiple teams. And that's simply a process that happens as you grow and as you gain experience working on different projects and understanding what works and what doesn't and what's impactful and what's not and how to evaluate that. So again, I think if you are kind of trying to figure out how to make impact in a company, one of the things that you can look at is, well, what does the career progression look like? What's the criteria for kind of getting promoted to the next level? What do people expect of senior engineers or senior product managers versus junior? And a good company should have a pretty clear articulation of what it takes to kind of progress in your career, which should be tied to impact. I think a good company also should have priorities and like, hey, these are our goals. This is our mission. This is what we're trying to achieve. That should be very clear. That should be somewhat stable. If it's not clear, or if you don't understand what the company is trying to do, then that might be a problem. So again, I think it is totally possible to make impact in companies. I think a lot of it really depends on the strength of the leadership team, the mission of the company, how they evaluate and provide career opportunities for the people in it. So if you're evaluating a company, if you're interviewing, ask them their approach to, career advancement. Ask them how they evaluate impact. Ask them what their goals are. Ask them how they expect you to contribute or how you could contribute. And if you don't get crisp answers to that, then you might be, talking to a group that doesn't have this totally dialed in. All right, let's see here. What are the most important things to know for students who want to work at Facebook? Um, so there's a couple of things. One is if you want to work at Facebook and you're a student, I actually encourage you to try to get an internship. Um, an internship at Facebook will give you, a really good view of how Facebook works. It'll give you some really, really good engineering experience or product experience. Um, and I think that that is a successful path I've seen for a lot of people that had an internship at Facebook become full-time employees. If you don't, want to get an internship at Facebook or don't get an internship, certainly get an internship somewhere, maybe in another company. When I look at kind of people coming in, having some internship experience, some real software development experience is really valuable. I think in terms of our interview process, usually, the recruiters will talk to you about what that entails. We have, for engineers, a few coding interviews. So it's kind of designed to kind of look at your algorithmic skill. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a particular language. We do whiteboard coding just to kind of test general algorithmic knowledge, general problem solving skills. We also do an interview format where we'll ask you to kind of maybe approach designing a system a certain way so that you can kind of whiteboard out how do you think about building a system or building something maybe a little bit more complex. What are the constraints? What are the trade-offs? We want to see how you think about these things. We'll ask you about your experience as well on a separate interview. What were some of your most enjoyable projects? What were things that you learned? We want to kind of understand how you approach problems, how you've dealt with setbacks, how you've dealt with challenges. And we talk a lot about this on our careers page where you can go and kind of learn more about how we evaluate things. But I think the main thing is that, certainly, send your resume, look at the careers page, prepare yourself for the interview process. The other thing that I kind of recommend too is if you're kind of new to interviewing, don't have like Facebook or Google be like your first interview. Get a couple of interviews at maybe other companies just to practice. I think sometimes people come in and they haven't interviewed and they're rusty and they're really nervous. And we have ways, we look at, if we think an interviewer was too nervous, we'll maybe do a follow-up interview. But I just generally recommend that people prepare for these either by interviewing elsewhere, practicing. That's just something that's kind of really important so that when you show up on the interview, you kind of aren't rusty, you kind of know what to expect. You feel a little bit more calm and relaxed. So, yeah, and I think, the other thing is to just make sure that you are, kind of open to learning and making an impact, and you'll have a really good chance of finding something at Facebook that you're passionate about. Okay, this question is, what is it like to work at a company that is capable of inventing new technologies to tackle the problems that you face? At what point do you create something new rather than improve existing options? Yeah, this is a good question. So I think it's always important to look at existing options and existing solutions. I think there's some companies that have a little bit of a not invented here syndrome and kind of create, whether it's new programming frameworks or new systems that aren't that much different than other ones. I think at Facebook, the times when we have invented new technologies, which there have been several, is mostly due to our scale. So there are certain types of problems that we have to solve that there is just not an existing known solution for. So a classic example is, our website, all of our, kind of web services are written in PHP. But certainly, it was about maybe 7 or 8 years ago that as Facebook grew quickly, running the code through a regular PHP interpreter was just getting very, very slow and hard to scale. And so, Facebook evaluated some kind of options to potentially do compiled code. They looked at a bunch of different technologies, but in the end, it was actually inventing kind of our own PHP compiler that compiled the PHP down to C++ that was the right solution for us. And over time, we've kind of iterated on that. We've open sourced a lot of this stuff. We've built language extensions onto PHP in order to do this. And that was just of the necessity to both scale and continue to have our engineering teams be able to move really fast in terms of delivering new features. So I think you kind of, or certainly when we invent new technologies, it is out of necessity to solve problems that happen at our scale. But as I said in the previous question about open source, we've been sharing a lot of those with the world. Actually, a good example of some technology that we implemented recently is the 360 video. So we actually created a video camera that can take 360 video, and we open sourced the hardware specs for it, I think, which we made available earlier this week. So this is kind of a cool example of, we believe that like 360 video is really exciting. There's definitely a lot of technology issues in being able to build a capture system that works with high resolution and low latency. That is a hard problem to solve, but we think that people will be excited about being able to create this new format, and so it made sense for us to invest in figuring out how to build what we think would be a great camera that could deliver awesome experiences, and then share that spec with anybody that wanted to build one of these so that they could kind of create it so that we could have essentially more opportunities to kind of view and capture 360 video. So a lot of the stuff that we build is just things that are, make sense at our scale, or are things that we think we could help bring into the world and kind of accelerate the development of. So that's a good question. All right, let's see. What qualities do you most value in an engineer at Facebook? So we actually have a few dimensions that we talk to engineers about in terms of being able to make an impact. The first dimension that we talk about is something we call engineering excellence. So we value engineers that create great code, that create, great software that performs well, that doesn't have bugs, that can be iterated upon quickly, and that delivers value and impact. And that really is kind of one of the core things that we evaluate, and particularly at people who are kind of more junior, we really weight that, like, how well can you develop and deliver software really highly. As you become a little bit more senior, we start to value this dimension we call direction, which is how good of a job are you doing in terms of being able to identify new projects that we should invest in, new technologies, new systems that need to be improved, or existing systems that need to be rewritten in order to kind of build out the next set of products we want to create. Can you identify product ideas? Can you resolve disagreements across teams? Can you help other engineers succeed? Can you help correct a project that's going too slowly? These are more of kind of the leadership dimensions that we start to value as you become a more experienced engineer. And then finally, we value your contributions to Facebook culture and to the organization. So are you out there interviewing people, right? Interviewing is really important if we want to continue to find the best talent to work at the company? Are you contributing to that? Are you kind of contributing to the overall engineering culture, whether it's mentoring other engineers, teaching classes, helping to review other people's code, setting up hackathons, just kind of participating in the culture. Facebook has a really special and vibrant culture, and we do want to reward engineers that help contribute to that. So those are kind of the main dimensions, great engineering, the ability to establish direction and kind of help us identify, new projects or how to work more effectively on existing projects. And then how are you helping the company culture and overall organizational success? All right. Let's see. Probably time for one more. Why did you join Facebook and why have you stayed? I joined Facebook, partially because my startup was kind of acqui-hired by Facebook, but mostly because I saw what they were doing and how it was changing the way people communicate and connect with one another, and I thought that was really exciting. I also really wanted the experience of working for what I knew was going to be like a very top-notch engineering company where I'd be surrounded by a lot of talented engineers and I would learn a lot. So that was what attracted me to Facebook. The reason why I stay at Facebook after 6 years is because I'm still being challenged. I'm still finding new opportunities. And the thing that I enjoy the most right now is actually Facebook is doing so many things. We have Messenger, we have our main product, we have Newsfeed, we're working on video, we're working on, advanced artificial intelligence, we're working on virtual reality, we're working on, growing internationally in emerging markets. There are these like problems that Facebook is trying to solve and products that they're trying to create that just on a regular basis give me the opportunity to learn about new businesses, to learn about new business models, to learn about new technology, to figure out how we can deliver great products. And so it's really the diversity of projects and opportunities to continue learning that have kept me there. And I also just really love working with the people there. There's a couple of folks who I work with regularly that I've worked with for several years. We really trust each other. We can be really open with each other. And it's just fun when you enjoy your coworkers and just enjoy kind of collaborating and working with them. So those are all of the things that keep me there. So it's about 8 o'clock now. I'm out of time. Thanks everyone for asking questions. I hope that this was useful, and I'll be signing off. Have a good evening.